Please have your seat, please, so that we can start. Have your seat.
Chers amis, bienvenue à tous ici à Paris, à l'UNESCO, pour ce sujet majeur qui nous réunit, pour lequel, vous le savez, l'UNESCO est engagée depuis longtemps. C'est un moment pour prendre des engagements qui soient tournés vers l'action et pour faire vivre cette diplomatie de l'eau qui est une diplomatie de la paix. Je vous remercie et vous souhaite un excellent sommet. Merci beaucoup.
If you look at statistics, you understand that groundwater is one of the largest part of fresh water available for mankind. So groundwater remains our last chance to save water for the future and even for ourselves today.
One thing I would start is make people realize how important groundwater is, because we do not realize the importance of groundwater so far. So it's invisible and it's like it doesn't exist.
So groundwater is a very complicated issue and it needs to be addressed very seriously. And we are, and the countries in the region are definitely making very important steps toward, at the end of the day, we have to empower integrated and adaptive water resources management.
A lot of people around the world depend on groundwater. For example, just to tell you one number, 2 billion people depend on groundwater for their daily needs, which is a lot. In some countries, depend almost 100% on groundwater for the drinking water supply. It's very important, but not only for humans, but also for nature.
Cette eau qui transite par le sous-sol est extrêmement importante. La vie des écosystèmes qui sont dépendants de zones humides, de zones le long de cours d'eau. Donc c'est vraiment une part importante du cycle de l'eau.
We need to think more collectively about how much water we are using and do we really need that much water?
In isolated villages, young girls have to carry water long distances from wells, and they don't get a chance for education because they have to supply the family with water. And so we're hoping that the whole concept of what's needed in groundwater will change.
I think there's a lot we can learn from looking backwards, not just forwards. Of course, it should inform the way we think about the present and the future.
The motivation behind this is the same motivation that is behind water science policy in general, which is to educate people about water and environmental issues and how this relates to everyone and the many stories that are behind the water issues and the people that are behind them.
I think young people in general are much more attuned to the environment than they were in my generation. And so I find that young children are much quicker to point out the things that we're doing wrong.
Il faut former les jeunes, il faut leur expliquer quels sont les enjeux liés à l'eau de manière générale et aux eaux souterraines. Et il faut faire en sorte qu'ils soient prêts pour prendre en main le futur.
I want to thank you for your commitment, your passion and your partnership. And I want to see you in New York yet next year with commitments that really inspire the world to scale up everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We just watched a rapid summary of some elements of our interactions during those 2 days. Today, now we have the last, but not the least, segment of the summit. This is a very, very important segment because this is a segment where we'll listen to statements, commitments from member state, our constituency, and also is having a summary of what happened during the 2 days. So without further ado, I want to ask our key partner in organizing this very, very important summit. As you know, there was a task force which was put in place by UN Water coordinated by UNESCO and IGRAC. I would like to call upon my colleague Neno Kukurik to say a few words during this segment of the closing.
Thank you, Abu. Dear colleagues, in a certain sense, groundwater resources are like climate. There is a change, a negative trend, but not everyone is noticing that or doesn't want to notice. There is a minority which is aware of this challenge, and those are the people already affected by water shortage, and those like us, members of scientific and international cooperation community. Next to us, there is a sleeping majority, inert, indifferent, which needs to be shaken up and waken up. This is not easy. It is an incremental process and asks for a change of mindset. However, when it comes to groundwater, we need to do it, and only we can do it. If we don't do it, we who are sitting here and our colleagues who are watching us, nobody is going to do it. So it's our task. Groundwater specialists are very dedicated professionals, but many of our colleagues somehow do not see rising awareness and lobbying for groundwater as a part of their work. Well, we need everyone to join forces to increase visibility of groundwater and create conditions to improve its management. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neno. So without further ado, I want to call upon the two general rapporteurs to come to the stage, Gabriel Stein and Karen Wilhoff, for the summary of the funding of the different sessions.
Dear distinguished participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end, and it's my pleasure and honor to convey to you the first set of key messages from the Groundwater Summit. And my colleague, Gabriel, will take over to conclude. In congratulating UN Water, UNESCO, IGRAC, and collaborating partners and governments for the success of this pivotal event, let me summarize as follows. Groundwater is at a crossroads. From having traveled a bumpy yet invisible road, we now see it entering a path of more recognition, attention, and dedicated efforts. Thanks to the Year of Groundwater, culminating in this Groundwater Summit, and many years of hard work ahead of this to build the momentum, we can safely say that we've come a long way. However, we have to push even further, and we have to push the bar so that, we still continue and address the challenges, because as we've heard the last couple of days, they are many. What is essential to us, our fundamental resources, they cannot be neglected and ignored, no matter how invisible they are. I'm going to now give a bit of overview of the 5 accelerators that we have been discussing over the last days, and on the topics of data and information, innovation, finance, and governance. These are the following sort of messages that emerged. On the data and information, due to the invisible and complex and heterogeneous nature of groundwater, monitoring and assessment is essential. We are still far from understanding our subsurface resources. The increasing reliance on groundwater creates a demand for further data. On the other hand, there's also a push towards enhancing activities around data management for example, through the push of new technology, which I will be discussing also. Integrating groundwater monitoring in broader water and environment monitoring is essential. We all know the major effects that we see on ecosystems and so on from bad management of groundwater. On the side of data, we also discussed the topic of soft data as being more and more important, and they're coming on the agenda, for instance, around use and abstraction of groundwater, around the functionality of infrastructure like wells, and how well institutions and governance are performing. So we need to also collect that type of data. Sharing of data and capacitating managers, users, and stakeholders is very critical. The sharing of data is empowering stakeholders, and we really need to be aware of this critical aspect as we go forward. Finally, we need more data on climate change and the impacts on groundwater. As we know, groundwater has this buffering capacity, and we don't want to undermine that. Groundwater monitoring and management should be long-term, adaptive, and iterative, reducing uncertainty and risks as critical new knowledge and solutions become available. On innovation, it has to do with advances within science, technology, but also infrastructure policies, standards, and practice, and including social collaboration and partnerships. We have to innovate on all fronts, as well as financing, which I will touch on also. Innovation plays a key role in achieving the SDGs. Critical recent groundwater innovations include Earth observations and remote sensing techniques, novel monitoring and modeling technologies, digitization, resilient and robust well infrastructure, affordable climate and groundwater smart, in parentheses, solar pumping technologies, and cost-effective novel aquifer and soil remediation technologies. Integrated groundwater, sensitive circular and nature-based solutions are also very much coming on the agenda, and they include managed aquifer recharge and storage, sustainable land and ecosystem and soil management, conservation, agriculture, and green stormwater, and management of groundwater in cities. A little bit on the human capacity development. I don't include institutional capacity development because I see that more as a governance issue. So everybody has almost a human right to know about groundwater. So we really need to step up on that front, and it has been said so many times throughout the last couple of days. Human capacity development has to be targeted, has to be context specific, and it has to acknowledge already existing knowledge, like indigenous knowledge and so on. It's very critical. And we also have to increase the public literacy and awareness on groundwater. We all need to be in this game together. On financing, sustaining and expanding societal benefits from groundwater requires political commitment, and investments in groundwater need to be augmented as part of integrated water resources management, climate change, adaptation and mitigation, and broader strategies including capacity strengthening. Novel financing tools are being developed. We saw that over the last couple of days, and put forward, and they are either focusing specifically on groundwater or facilitate specific groundwater focus. And that is very welcome to the community. Oftentimes as part of climate financing tools, nexus tools, transboundary tools, and even policy and governance tools. Still, financing and investment on groundwater management, monitoring and protection lag behind. Financing needs to address the specific contextual conditions present, social, economic, climate, institutions and so on, whether aimed at further development of groundwater in sub-Saharan Africa, where it's very needed, or in terms of better protection and groundwater, where it's polluted and overexploited. Governance, the last point, and not the least. From a local to global perspective, gaps have been identified, yet there's also progress. At the local level, there are indications that local groundwater management is feasible and can enhance its sustainable use. This requires that local stakeholders are capacitated and empowered to develop local structures for management and coordination of the use and protection of groundwater. There are evolving examples from India, Morocco, and also increasingly from sub-Saharan Africa that we can learn from and further expand and outscale. At the national scale, of course, with increasing climate effects and pressures on water from human needs, there's no country today that can ignore their groundwater resources. And the associated vulnerabilities, both in terms of the resource, but increasingly also in terms of vulnerabilities of the societies at large. There is an increasing trend, but still large needs for conjunctive and integrated management of water resources and more systemic and circular approaches. At the international transboundary level, we talked a lot about that. And while the national challenges persist, there's a long-standing but still growing recognition of the importance of international cooperation around aquifers, in particular shared transboundary aquifers between neighboring states. There are strong mechanisms and supporting tools, both on legal, institutional capacity development and resource assessment aspects available for the countries, enabling them to embark on the journey of cooperation. Where this takes place, there are clear indications that joint elevated knowledge and data sharing facilitate better prioritization of the resources for more sustainable solutions, avoiding conflicts and leveraging agreements, better policies and actions. At the global level, finally, meetings like this underscore that groundwater is no longer constrained to a local, national and even transboundary issue. We understand that groundwater is a key element to achieving the SDGs, and climate change and food security challenges know no borders. There's a need to cooperate and identify measures concerning groundwater resources and ensure global food security, climate resilience and peace. Finally, on human rights and equal benefits from groundwater, very, very central to our endeavors. It is essential to ensure that governance of groundwater is explicitly sensitive to reaching the disadvantaged communities, both in terms of data, information, innovation, and financing, and the solutions that we can find to put in place. Groundwater holds a great potential in terms of addressing climate change and disaster risk reduction, as well as socioeconomic development and livelihoods. Identifying robust and sustainable and equitable solutions across scales is important. My short summary of these messages don't lend justice to the wealth of messages and discussions we have witnessed over the last couple of days. More digested output will be synthesized and shared widely after the summit and as a lead to the UN 2023 Water Conference. Importantly, and in closing, we need to keep up the momentum and keep making the convincing case for groundwater going forward, continuously strengthen the partnerships with everybody, and I don't want to say anybody, but we had the youth on board, we have the private sector, we basically had everybody on board at this meeting, and it's great. And we need to see proactive commitments at all levels, on all accelerators, in order to reach our goals. And I'll hand over to Gabriel from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen, for that focused review and summary of the messages for the main points of the conference. What I'm going to do is give a much more overview, 5 main points I want to highlight in terms of the main messages that came out, that we think came out of this conference. The first one is that we're facing major water challenges worldwide, especially with groundwater. It's to the point that we're not just very concerned, in fact, some people sounded scared. This is a serious problem we're having worldwide with water, freshwater resources, and especially groundwater resources. This is evident from the problems with maintaining basic pumping technology to the extensive depletion and even peak groundwater warning that we heard a number of times over the few days. That's number one. Number two, critical to use a holistic approach to groundwater governance, management, and sustainability. We need to explore cutting-edge technologies and methodologies. We need to rediscover innovative ancestral knowledge and techniques. We need to engage not only with the technical experts and experienced policymakers, but also all members of civil society, and especially women, local indigenous communities, young people, young professionals, and so on. So that's the second main message in terms of having this holistic approach. Third, in terms of engagement, we have to cooperate. We have to commit to cooperate amongst nations, amongst researchers, amongst disciplines. Political level, academic, societal, professional level, local, regional, and international level. This is the only way that we're going to be able to meet these challenges. Four, what we still need is commitment. We've heard that especially in the last session from the youth representatives. We need commitments by nations, by intergovernmental organizations, civil society, and all of you, people around the world, to begin implementing and funding all of our proposed solutions. While we clearly need to continue developing new knowledge and new ideas, we already have some of the potential solutions at hand, and we need to start implementing them today. Lastly, there's an undertone here that I don't think was stated very well, but it's there. There has to be accountability. We have to hold accountable those who have responsibility for ensuring water supply, water resources, water management, and all of those who make commitments to finance and implement the solutions. Everybody has to hold each other and everybody else responsible and accountable to fulfilling these obligations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gabriel and Karen, for the summary of the findings of the differentiation during this summit. We are very grateful for your work of General Rapporteur, and thank you for that. Now to present the UN Water Joint message and call for action, I would like to invite Madhushri Chatterjee, who is the Chief of Natural Resources and Interrelated Branch at the Division for Sustainable Development Goals at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. Madhu?
Thank you, Abu. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear participants, thank you for being here today. As also representing UN Water, as Secretary of UN Water, it is a real privilege for me to read this statement out to you. During the past 2 days, we've heard a collective strong endorsement for groundwater as key to accomplishing sustainable development goals. Speakers before me have eloquently summarized the key messages emerging from the rich sessions that we've had. As we head towards the UN 2023 Water Conference in March, I would like to remind all of you present here of the call for action highlighted in the UN Water Joint Message on groundwater. I read, governments, the donor community, the private sector, and civil society are called upon to declare voluntary commitments and announce accelerated action towards A, financing sustainable groundwater management, development and use, collection and sharing of data and information, strengthening human and institutional capacity, leveraging and scaling up innovations for groundwater management, and enhancing groundwater governance. Member states are specifically called upon to register voluntary commitments on groundwater capacity development, data and information, innovation, governance, and finance as part of the Water Action Agenda of the UN 2023 Water Conference. Finally, I would like to express my sincere thanks to UNESCO for hosting us and bringing us all together here to discuss issues on groundwater, and I wish to congratulate you on its success. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhu, for this summary of the UN Water Joint Statement and call for action. Now we have the ministerial segment. We are very pleased to have commitment and statement from ministers for supporting this summit, for supporting work on moving issue regarding groundwater. We will have a series of 16 statements. Some are physical, others are video, and we will appreciate to, if possible, to stay within the 4 minutes as previously informed, so that we can go through this statement as soon as possible. So let's start first with the Minister of Land Management, Water and Sanitation Services of Botswana, Mr. Kefanze Munila.
I thank you, Mr. Moderator. I greet you again, distinguished guests. Botswana's vision is to increase water security, which will open more economic opportunities as the country is embarking on 4 national key priorities: export-led growth, building human capital, provision of appropriate infrastructure, and efficient spending and financing. The 4 national key priorities occur in the context of Botswana's transition to a knowledge-based economy. Collaborative approaches to transboundary water resources management will promote freshwater sustainability and cooperation, which is important especially within the context and setting of Botswana, with limited water supplies and heavily reliant on transboundary water resources as well as groundwater resources. Botswana is one of the world's most water-stressed countries. Thus, water security is a national priority. Groundwater in Botswana is unevenly distributed over the country, with about 80% of the population dependent on it compared to surface water sources. Annual recharge to aquifers from rainfall is also limited, reaching a maximum of about 40 millimeters in small areas and approaching 0 for most of the western and central parts of the country. In terms of water governance, equity and access to clean, potable, and well-governed water is a cornerstone of our government. Our domestic policy, foreign policy, and political posture is based on sustainable use of our water resources. Groundwater is therefore of vital importance to Botswana's economy and continued development, and in most of the rural areas, it may be the only available water resource that can be developed economically. Our 2006 National Water Master Plan review estimates the total sustainable yield of 96 million cubic liters per annum from developed and potential well fields, and to date, about 30% of these sustainable supply groundwater are in use. Therefore, there's need to efficiently expand these. Botswana therefore needs to develop a groundwater management strategy, of which a strategic action plan to mainly address issues of sustainable use of the resource will be developed by establishing efficient groundwater monitoring networks, water quality controls, and most importantly, modeling, protection and demarcation of our well fields. And this will go a long way in ensuring water security for the country. I would like to thank UNESCO for inviting us here, and my delegation have been well received, and we thank you, and we hope to see you in the future in other auspicious occasions. And we are going back to our country to report to Cabinet on our deliberations here. I thank you for your listening and attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Our next statement is from the Minister of Water Resources of China, Mr. Lee Guiying. This time it's a video. Please, the video of the minister.
Respected Assistant Director General, respected ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to attend the closing ceremony of the UN Water Summit on groundwater.
我谨代表中华人民共和国水利部，对峰会取得圆满成功表示祝贺。地下水是推动绿色发展的基础性、战略性资源。中国政府高度重视地下水保护管理，坚持以习近平生态文明思想为指导，坚持统筹规划、节水优先、高效利用、系统治理原则，推动地下水保护管理取得重大进展。一是强化体制、机制、法治，国务院出台《地下水管理条例》，对各省、自治区、直辖市实行目标责任制和考核评价制度，制定地下水保护专项规划，编制地下水超采综合治理专项方案。二是实施地下水取水总量、水位双控制度，采取截、控、换、补、管等措施，大力推进超采综合治理，以超采地区地下水位止跌回升，越来越多的河流恢复生命，越来越多的流域重现生机。三是强化地下水保护管理国际交流，搭建交流互鉴平台，深化监测、科研、治理项目合作，共享技术经验，共同推进地下水可持续发展。女士们、先生们，中国共产党第20次全国代表大会谋划了未来中国发展的目标任务和大政方针，强调要促进人与自然和谐共生，推动构建人类命运共同体。中国水利部门将始终秉持创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的新发展理念，在全球发展倡议引领下，积极响应峰会成果，加强联合国框架内地下水领域合作，推动建设一个清洁美丽的世界，为实现2030年可持续发展议程涉水目标做出更大贡献。谢谢。
Yeah, thank you to the Minister of China. Our next statement is from the Minister of Public Works of Chile, Juan Carlos Garcia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ADG for Natural Sciences, Ms. Director General Audrey Azoulay, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, Mr. President of the General Conference, Madam Chairperson of the Executive Board, dear friends of the water family. I'm delighted I was able to travel to be present in person at this summit. I have been listening to the presentations that raise so many questions for decision makers in view of what we need to do, how we need to do it, and especially whom we should be doing it with. Inclusiveness and participation of all stakeholders is, I believe, something we all share. At least it is now common to say so. However, doing so requires a change in our culture of governance in the field of water. Fortunately, I believe that this task has now begun. However, we are all gathered here because so much remains to be done, not only in improving our knowledge, but also to overcome the gender gap, to give but that example. I am here the only Minister for Latin America and the Caribbean who is present, and I met 25 experts and professionals of all countries throughout the region of Latin America and the Caribbean this morning, who were all active participants in this summit. I believe that I can tell you that in our region, we have capacity, intelligence, and commitment. As a region, there is a lot that we share. We have one of the highest urban populations in the world, and we also have one of the highest levels of water in the world. But make no mistake, those are averages. And reality can be very different in the Caribbean as compared to the Amazon basin or the situation of Chile, a country with deserts and with glaciers. And in effect, after 13 years of discussion in our country, which is also the duration of the longest drought in our recent history, 2 of the driest years ever recorded over these 13 years, we have reformed the water code. We have included many new standards in terms of regulation of groundwater, such as sustainability, interaction with wetlands, and establishing priorities for access of humans to drinking water, sanitation, and maintaining reserves for the future. We are working towards understanding what it is that we have that exists and yet is invisible. This is not easy. Chile has 375 aquifers. Several have been insufficiently studied. And out of the 375 aquifers, in 208, there is a sustainability risk. That is over 50% of our aquifers who are under threat. And this, of course, has an impact on human communities and ecosystems. In order to understand the full extent of the impact, over 80% of drinking water in rural areas in our country is, in fact, groundwater. It has been said here that science is fundamental. It is a priority for the good management of water, and this is why my government wishes to respond to the invitation of UNESCO to move forward towards an overall assessment of water science. Water is either increasingly polluted or becoming rarer. We need innovative and effective solutions, giving priority to human rights, drinking water, sanitation, and care for our ecosystems. Without science, without profound, extensive, and diverse knowledge, we are losing a fundamental tool for action. And we have a great interest in working jointly to integrate groundwater into our overall management of water resources, depending on water security and the management of river basins. Congratulations to the organizers, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency. Our next statement is from the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry of Finland, Mr. Antti Kurvinen. It's a video message. Video, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to greet on behalf of Finland the participants of the UN Water Summit on groundwater. My warmest thanks to the organizers, notably UNESCO and its IHP, for the kind hosting of this important high-level event. We celebrate groundwater today, and earlier this year, the World Water Development Report devoted to groundwater drew out attention to the challenges and opportunities related to its development and management. Groundwater is an extremely important resource for Finland. Groundwater bodies and managed aquifer recharge provide more than 60% of the national water supply. Some 10% of the population gets their water from their own private wells, mainly in rural areas. In many areas across the world, groundwater enables agriculture and ensures food security. Groundwater is a very special resource, yet it needs to be managed in an integrated fashion with surface water resources, land, and the environment. Only a good governance and effective balancing of different interests can ensure sustainable use and prevent conflicts. Importantly, the global freshwater conventions also apply to groundwaters, supporting cooperation in managing and protecting water resources. Being better protected from pollution than surface water, groundwater is crucial for security of water supply. This especially in these uncertain times when climate change is shifting the flow of water and aggravating hydrological extremes. Groundwater has a welcome balancing effect, sustaining river flows and ecosystems. Sustainable use of groundwater has to be made everybody's business. We have noticed that when the information systems provide for it, citizens contribute their observations. Moreover, a better awareness can change how we use and treat groundwater. International cooperation in framework of the European Union and the United Nations can really reinforce our efforts, improving knowledge and helping to share experience. Various innovative groundwater solutions have been developed or applied in Finland, and we are always ready to share and to cooperate. Stewardship of groundwater is continuous effort and responsibility, but the approaching UN 2023 Water Conference is an important moment to consolidate commitments, contributing to the Water Action Agenda. I welcome the powerful and timely UN Water Joint Message and call for action on this occasion. Thank you for your attention.
We thank His Excellencies for his statement. Our next statement is also a video message from the Federal Minister for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety, and Consumer Protection of Germany, Mrs. Steffi Lenke. The video, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, making the invisible visible. That is what we have to do for groundwater. 99% of the liquid fresh water on our planet is groundwater. And yet in many parts of the world, this precious resource is still unknown. The current World Water Development Report underlines once again the major gaps in our knowledge. Far too often, we are estimating rather than measuring. Despite the methods and instruments at our disposal for groundwater management, we still lack data. For that reason, we need to build technical and institutional capacities and establish a monitoring infrastructure. I am pleased that the Federal Institute for Geoscience and Natural Resources is working with global partners on sustainable management of groundwater resources. We need groundwater because the climate crisis is making rainfall patterns more and more unpredictable, and because many surface water bodies are polluted. We need groundwater to combat the global water crisis and ensure that human rights to water and sanitation are met for everyone. Under the German government's international climate initiative, my ministry promotes the protection and sustainable use for groundwater resources as a contribution to climate resilience, especially in African countries. Germany expressly supports the Coalition to Accelerate Transboundary Water Cooperation launched at this summit. 60% of global water reserves are shared by several countries. This includes many groundwater bodies. To protect these water bodies efficiently and establish information systems and financing mechanisms at scale, we need transboundary cooperation. I therefore urge other UN member states to join intergovernmental agreements for the use of transboundary water bodies and to ratify the UN Water Conventions. Ladies and gentlemen, making the invisible visible applies to water as a whole. That is why the Bonn Water Dialogues recommended appointing a UN Special Envoy for Water to raise awareness of the issue and help mobilize additional funding. I am confident that the UN Secretary General will heed the call to appoint such an envoy, a move now supported by 150 United Nations member states. That would be a clear step towards more visibility. Next year will be a decisive year for the entire water sector. Germany anticipates vital impetus from the UN Water Conference in March for the implementation of SDG 6 and all water-related goals of the 2030 Agenda. The call to action at today's summit is directed at every one of us. Governments around the world must recognize the essential role groundwater plays in combating the global water crisis and actively call for sustainable groundwater management. This is crucial for the success of the UN 2023 Water Conference and for worldwide sustainable management of the precious resource water. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Her Excellency. I'm now pleased to invite the Minister of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia, Mrs. Excellency Siti Nurbaya Baka.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Like many other countries, Indonesia faced the same problems on water provision, water management, and ability to balance the needs of nature and society without severely compromising one or the other, and how to manage threats to water supply quality and water resources in the face of increasingly urbanized and challenged by climate change. The provision and management of water are not merely technical problems whose resolution hinges on hydrological principle, economic cost, or engineering feasibility. The allocation, protection, and use of water are influenced by a complex array of statutes, rules and norm exchange, economically, socially, and environmentally. In that light, Indonesia seriously considers the link with landscape configuration with accordance to biophysical condition and socio-economic aspect. Landscape governance should be addressed to ensure continuity of water supply in sufficient quantity and good quality. Indonesia initiated numerous programs of prevention and improvement of landscape stability via ecosystem-based approach to guarantee the water availability, in accordance with spatial and time dimensions. Spatial-based water conservation planning in defining vegetative and soil conservation interventions at critical catchment and recharge area has been developed by considering topographic, soil properties, and socio-economic aspects. For Indonesia, groundwater is managed as a part of water resource as regulated in Law Number 17, year 2019, in which that groundwater resources are managed within groundwater basin areas that are belong to river basin in a such integrated management water resources. The concept of conjunctive use is applied to fulfill water demand, whereas surface water become priority and groundwater is the last choice. As well, conservation synergy between surface water and groundwater for sustainable water resources is maintained. At this juncture, Indonesia is on its way to fulfilling its commitment and implement to harmonize the SDGs and the national water security, among others, through constructing 61 dams as the main source of raw water, which also function to conserve water resources, including groundwater. Implementing land rehabilitation and soil conservation by our climate action with national agenda of, we call it, Indonesia Forest and Other Land Use Net Sink 2030 or negative emission by 2030. And focusing on efforts to prevent land subsidence by reducing excessive groundwater extraction by controlling the licenses, enhance governance and institutional capacity building. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, to end my remark, let me conclude by reaffirming that to protect the quality of groundwater resources and ensure their sustainability use is requiring us to move beyond business as usual and pursue more robust efforts, the collaboration in particular, to promote cross-sectoral, interdisciplinary and integrated approaches with multi-stakeholders involvement towards sustainable groundwater management. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. I'm pleased now to invite the Minister of Water and Sanitation of Malawi, Excellencies Abida Sidi Mia.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of Malawi, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to UNESCO and its affiliates for organizing this extremely important summit. Groundwater plays a crucial part in maintaining human life and natural ecosystems on Earth. In Malawi, over 70% of the rural population is supplied with drinking water extracted from groundwater by boreholes. We are in discussions with development partners to install more solar-powered boreholes with higher efficiency and more outlet points to provide better service to our rural communities. From an economic perspective, groundwater is a major source of water for agricultural and industrial activities in Malawi. Considering the encompassing importance of groundwater, this valuable resource must be protected for future generations to come. Groundwater supplies are susceptible to being overdrawn and unknowingly polluted by landfills, septic tanks, leached fertilizers, pesticides, and mining. to say mostly by human impact, climate change and environmental degradation have become greater threats to groundwater recharge and quality. The sustainable management of groundwater is dependent on a holistic approach where different components are integrated and linked by a shared value: groundwater security. UNESCO must be commended for promoting education, science, and culture around the world. These tools can and must be applied in sustainable groundwater management. We need to capacitate institutions at all levels to respond to groundwater resource challenges, especially under sudden and extreme climatic shocks. Science also offers various potential solutions to groundwater challenges. The government of Malawi encourages groundwater scientists and administrative professionals to continue exploring for solutions that enable groundwater protection and sustainable harvesting. Having clear policies in place is essential for the correct use and protection of different groundwater resources. Different aquifer systems demand different extraction methods to enable them to recharge, thereby ensuring their long-term viability and protection. With advances in technology, greater research being carried out regarding groundwater, Malawi remains committed to work with development partners to harness this natural resource in the most sustainable ways possible. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you, Excellencies.
It's a pleasure for me now to invite the Minister of Equipment and Water from Morocco, His Excellency Nisa Baraka. Your Excellency, please. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of water, if you will allow me, at the end of this summit, which is of such importance, let me share with you one of our sincere beliefs. My first belief is that the issue of groundwater is a major issue. Either it is underused or overused. And we would like to thank UNESCO for having highlighted this problem. My second belief is that it is necessary to galvanize the decision makers as to how important it is to react now so that we can preempt, preserve, and better manage the groundwaters for future generations, but also for current day generations. My third conviction is that to be able to move from simple declarations to action, we have to put the spotlight on certain actions in the lines of the 6 actions that have been highlighted by UNESCO. Let me mention some of the actions that would be possible. First of all, to work on know-how, awareness. We have to develop the information systems pertaining to groundwater, to strengthen capacities, and at the same time, to innovate in this area. It's also a question of preserving groundwaters by reducing the pressure on them, thanks to using conventional and unconventional water means, using water transfer. Fourthly, we could also be doing something as to strengthening this groundwater artificially if need be. And fifthly, we need a better water efficiency in the tourism, in industry, and so forth. And finally, we should be setting up some form of integrated governance of these resources, these water resources. And today, we cannot talk about integrated water management if we ignore groundwater. So it's important to develop a participative approach for these decision makers who are the ones who will be able to come up with integrated systems that will enable us to progress and to achieve concrete results. And lastly, we have to develop metrics that will allow us to assess the impact, the economic impact of any action that we take in the area of groundwater management. Morocco, the King of Morocco, in the opening of Parliament last October, drew up a roadmap, and we today stand alongside you in the Trans-Border Coalition. We also are active in cooperating with a certain number of partner countries so that we can share our experiences with a certain number of other countries when it comes to the integrated management of water, as stipulated in the Dakar Declaration. And to conclude, I would like to say that we are convinced that we will only truly be able to shoulder this challenge if we stand together, if we move together, and if we share together a rationale of responsibility and action so that we can reach the final objective, which is to ensure the water sustainability for citizens. Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
The next statement is from the Minister of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform of Namibia, His Excellency Carl Cheletwin. He is also the President of African Minister Council on Water.
Thank you very much. We had fruitful 2 days. Now it's to say our famous last words, isn't it? I will start with saying that we have to appreciate and recognize the value of water for all communities and the environment. It is a common good which is not to be taken for granted and may not be wasted. In the light of that, we believe that it is important to increase investments that builds capacity and addresses the challenges faced in respect of availability and access to comprehensive data, particularly on groundwater resources characteristics, development, utilization, and management. We have to foster research and application of knowledge and innovations to inform sector interventions targeted at improving water governance and management, as well as water sanitation and hygiene services delivery. We have to develop the institutional capacity and governance structures related to groundwater resource development and management so as to unlock both public and private investments into the groundwater sector. We have to implement an integrated water resource management approach at all levels. This includes transboundary cooperation on both surface and groundwater resources to ensure a sustainable supply of water for life, agriculture and food production, energy and other ecosystem services and benefits. Africa must be able to rely on its own capacities to utilize its resources. Resilience against droughts and water scarcity remains weak, and risks are on the increase due to climate change. Groundwater remains one of our best insurance policies against water scarcities and drought. Hence, groundwater resource development and protection must become a priority. Managing groundwater resources properly is a priority. We at international, regional, national and local level have to recognize that we have made good progress in establishing what we have in terms of groundwater resources. We don't know everything, but we have made good progress. But now we must develop strategies and measures that ensure security, sustainability, accountability, and affordability for current and future generations with regard to access to water. This, of course, also includes transboundary management, because water, as I said, is a common good. In conclusion, it is our hope that by 2030, all our citizens have secure access to safe drinking water and that we are safely managing sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. Our next statement is a video message from the Minister of Environment of the Republic of Korea, Her Excellency Hwa Jin-han. Please, the video.
안녕하십니까. 대한민국 환경부 장관 한화진입니다. 먼저 UN Water Summit on Groundwater 2021을 준비하시느라 고생하신 관계자 여러분의 노고에 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 지구상의 모든 생명은 물과 함께 시작되었고 오늘날 인류의 삶과 산업활동을 지탱하는 필수적 요소도 바로 물입니다. 하지만 기후변화로 인한 가뭄 등 이상기후가 심화되면서 지하수는 그 가치와 역할이 더욱 커지고 있습니다. 이러한 상황에서 기후위기 시대의 중요한 수자원인 지하수의 중요성을 확인하고 지속가능한 활용과 보존을 위해 전 세계 정부, 국제기구, 전문가들이 한자리에 모여 비전과 대안을 논의한 이번 행사는 그 어느 때보다 의미가 크다고 생각합니다. 최근 세계 곳곳은 홍수와 가뭄으로 극심한 고통을 받고 있으며 대한민국도 예외가 아닙니다. 올 여름 기록적인 집중호우와 이어진 초강력 태풍의 영향으로 도심지가 침수되고 안타까운 인명피해도 발생하였습니다. 반면 일부 지역은 극심한 가뭄 현상이 지속되고 있습니다. 많은 전문가들이 이러한 이상기후가 점차 가속화될 것이라고 예측하고 있어 물 관리 여건은 더욱 어려워질 것으로 전망됩니다. 이에 지하수의 효과적이고 지속 가능한 활용은 국제사회가 함께 고민하고 해결해 가야 할 숙제라 할 수 있습니다. 대한민국도 지하수의 보전, 관리 대책을 적극 추진하고 있습니다. 체계적인 지하수의 이용과 관리를 위한 법령을 마련하고 지하수 관리 기본 계획을 수립하여 지하수의 오염 관리와 지속 가능한 개발, 활용 등을 추진하고 있습니다. 지하수 이용자와의 소통을 위해 지역별 거버넌스도 구축해 나가고 있습니다. 특히 물 공급이 취약한 도서 내륙 지역에는 지하수 댐 설치 등을 통해 물 복지 서비스를 확대해 나갈 것입니다. 아울러 지하철 건축물 등을 건설할 때 발생하는 유출 지하수를 냉난방, 소수력 발전 등에 적극 활용하여 탄소 중립에도 기여할 것입니다. 나아가 대한민국은 각국이 직면하고 있는 물 문제 해결을 위해 지하수 관리에 대한 경험과 노력을 국제사회와 아낌없이 나눌 것입니다. 모쪼록 이번 행사가 미래의 핵심 수자원으로서의 지하수의 역할을 정립하는 자리가 되었길 바라며 멋진 대화의 장을 기획해 주신 유엔과 유네스코 관계자분께 다시 한번 감사 인사를 드립니다. 고맙습니다.
Thank you to Her Excellencies.
I would now like to invite His Excellency Cyril Baichang from Senegal, Water and Sanitation. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me first of all to renew Senegal's thanks to UNESCO for this high-quality participation and contribution in this 9th Water Forum, following on from the Dakar launch by the Director General of UNESCO, Madame Audrey Azoulay, of the UN 2022 report on groundwater. This water invites us, and I quote, to exploit the enormous potential of groundwater today and to protect these resources for tomorrow. Up until now, groundwater was an invisible treasure. By consecrating the year 2022 as the year of groundwater, UN Water has given us the opportunity of pulling together our efforts so that this topic takes pride of place, as indeed it should in the World Water Agenda. This is a key stage for putting groundwater at the very heart of all politics in our states. And this is why this summit is extremely timely. It is time that groundwater and joint aquifers take the front of the stage in the 2023 Water Conference. As in the African Water Vision till 2025, water is often the only source of drinkable water for more than 75% of the African population. We therefore should be including this topic in all of our agendas: water security and food security. It is vital that all stakeholders of the 9th Water Forum, it was vital that last March in Dakar, this topic was enshrined in the Dakar Declaration, a blue deal for water security and sanitation and for peace and development, particularly in the action plan for water basins and aquifers. This declaration calls upon the international community to achieve 5 fundamental goals. First of all, to guarantee a right to water and sanitation to all. 2, to guarantee the availability of water and water resilience. 3, to ensure that there be financial finance. 4, that there be an inclusive governance of water. And 5, to strengthen cooperation. In order to materialize these 5 objectives, we need to have synergies between the Blue Deal and joint messages and the call to action of UN Water, entitled Underground Water, Invisible Resources for Sustainable Development. For this to be a true lever towards universal access of water and to build a sustainable future, I therefore call upon all delegates and the representatives of international institutions to carry forth together the message of this summit on underground water to the 2023 UN Water Conference, so that finally underground water in the Water Action Agenda and in the Sustainable Development Agenda becomes visible. Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Our next statement is a video message from the Minister of Environment and Spatial Planning of Slovenia, Mr. Uroš Brezan. Video, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. Some years ago, science reached consensus that the world is facing water crisis, which is defined by having too much water, not enough water, or water of not appropriate quality. Even more, Water crisis, together with climate and biodiversity crisis, form a complex and interconnected environmental challenge, so far never recorded before. Water, a limiting factor for sustainable development, ecosystem protection, climate change adaptation and biodiversity conservation, is in the center of it. Therefore, it is of our highest priority to manage both surface waters and groundwater in the most sustainable way possible, and in a global context by employing water cooperation on all levels, national, bilateral, regional or global. We should feel responsible to do this. In the mentioned context, the UN Groundwater Summit is an event with a special mission, as it is dedicated to the invisible part of the freshwater resources. About 30 times more fresh water than it is visible on Earth's surface is stored underground and out of sight. It is the main source of drinking water for approximately 50% of the world's population. It serves more than 70% of the world's irrigated land. In arid countries, even about 90%, sustains ecosystems and endangered species and mitigates the climate change pressures. Besides pollution, groundwater's major stressor is withdrawals from pumped wells. Aquifers are under stress, many times abused by man. Furthermore, countries sharing aquifers do not cooperate on this issue on an adequate level. The second UN Progress Report on Transboundary Water Cooperation indicates that 148 countries share groundwater resources with at least one bordering country. However, only 12 countries reported to have aquifer-specific agreements in place. Despite water's critical role for life and development on Earth, we are not reaching our common goal, the SDG 6. It is not well on track, and we need to speed up the process of its realization substantially. Therefore, the UN Groundwater Summit is so much more important event. The last major water event just before the UN 2023 Water Conference next year, which will be only the second one in 46 years. It is the opportunity to discuss and plan our further efforts regarding the groundwater in the future, focused on 5 cross-cutting accelerators and to give additional attention to the transboundary water cooperation. We are looking forward to see groundwater represented also in all parts of the UN 2023 Water Conference, in interactive dialogues, special events and side events in an adequate way. This summit succeeded to make groundwater more visible in order to better manage and protect it, also in transboundary context. I strongly believe the summit's joint message will encourage governments, international organizations, financial institutions, basin organizations, non-governmental organizations, academia and civil society to make commitments related to the topics and issues of groundwater at the UN Water Conference 2023 and enable them to be included in the Water Action Agenda, regularly monitored and stay visible in the future. I wish you all the best and good luck on your way to New York next year. Let's meet there and raise our voices for groundwater too. Let's make groundwater visible to the world. Thank you.
Thank you to His Excellency. Our next statement is also a video message from the Minister of Public Infrastructure and Utilities, Transport, Information, Communication and Technology and Post of St. Kitts and Nevis. Excellency Cornelis Mena. Video, please.
Greetings, distinguished ministers and water experts from UNESCO and other international agencies and stakeholders. Today I wish to speak on the chronic paucity of groundwater supplies in St. Kitts and Nevis and across the entire Caribbean region, with a legacy going back years and where more recently the situation has intensified as a result of climate change. St. Kitts and Nevis in particular faces the following 3 critical climate change issues: higher temperatures and droughts with a decrease in annual rainfall of nearly 20% over the last 10 years alone, leading to critical water shortages; coastal erosion leading to loss of beach and damage to coastal infrastructure; increase in the number and intensity of hurricanes in our region. While our new government is determined to restore 24-hour supply of water, certain topographical and infrastructural characteristics of small islands hamper our efforts in replenishment of fresh water, including small land mass with limited catchment basins. There is limited availability of surface water throughout the year, leading to high dependence on limited amounts of groundwater, which at present require fossil fuel energy to extract. In addition, climate change factors have exacerbated the problem as global warming has contributed to issues such as drainage problems, soil and water degradation, and rising sea levels, leading to saltwater intrusion in aquifers causing contamination of groundwater. Water shortages in St. Kitts and Nevis and across the Caribbean have a constraining impact on major food production. The limited source of water also fuels several conflicts as different areas, including agriculture, hydroelectricity, and drinking water and sanitation, compete for this already scarce resource. Distinguished ministers and UN experts, I do not exaggerate when I state that I have probably understated the very real challenges to water security of Caribbean states. Going forward, what is desperately needed is increased expertise in use of technological innovations such as solar-powered micro-irrigation systems to improve water efficiency. Expertise is also required for the management of and access to clean and renewable energy to increase agricultural productivity and optimization of water use. Looking ahead to the UN 2023 Water Conference, we can strengthen water resource management if we adopt timely measures to pursue some identified science-based capacity-building activities. These would include improving water use efficiency to support agriculture, flood and drought mitigation, reducing water contamination and pollution, improving wastewater treatment, strengthening water infrastructure and technology, building a reliable basis for data collection and storage in digitized format, and rethinking governance and policy for future sustainable use of water. I therefore call upon UNESCO, IHP, the FAO, and other relevant UN agencies to join us in strengthening the Caribbean SID's scientific, technical, and policy capacities to achieve the aforementioned goals. The need is urgent, and action at the highest political levels, such as at UNESCO IHP, is required. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis stands ready to act as a catalyst in developing a platform to enable this dialogue to materialize. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to His Excellency.
It's now my pleasure to invite the High Commissioner from Senegal, His Excellency Mohamed Abdel Veta.
Son Excellence Mohamed Abdel Veta.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor for me to be here with you today in Paris at UNESCO in front of you all on the occasion of this important summit on underground water, and I would like to thank the organizers of the summit for having invited me. I would also like to warmly thank Madame Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, for her speech on the Senegal River yesterday when she opened this summit. Ladies and gentlemen, the Organization for the Management of the Senegal River, and thanks to has now benefited for more than 50 years of a fine management of the river, and it has shown that this river is not only good for economics, but also other countries, Guinea, Mauritania, and Senegal. The river furnishes these countries with electricity. We also have the Guina hydroelectric dam that was inaugurated last week by the prime ministers of the member states of the organization and in the presence of the in-office president of our organization, Mr. Selim Baicham, the Minister of Water and Sanitation in Senegal, who is here with us today in this room and who spoke a few minutes earlier. I would like to thank him for his unfailing support to our organization. It is thanks to these different infrastructures that we have more than 400,000 hectares of lands. Villages like Dakar today have drinkable water thanks to the river. Underground water today, rendering what is invisible visible, shows to what extent these groundwaters can contribute to giving drinkable water to these towns. That is our contribution to rendering what is invisible visible. Because of the lack of know-how, the lack of mastery, often water has not been integrated in management plans. But last September, the minister in charge of the aquifers in Mauritania, Gambia, and Senegal signed in Geneva a joint ministerial declaration in which they have decided to set up a framework trans-boundary management of these shared groundwater. In that same declaration, the ministers have asked the ONVS and other institutions to financially assist in the management of these river basins in Mauritania and Senegal. It was decided that the secretariat of the project would actually be taken over by l'ONVS, our organization. And during the 9th World Forum that was held last March in Dakar, high political decision makers were elected in, and we have the OMVG, the ONVS, other organizations, river basin organizations, the United Nations bodies as well, so that the different river basins could be perceived as worthy of excellent management that would enable us to reach our Sustainable Development Goals. We have prepared an action plan, the Dakar River Basin Plan, and the committees, therefore, commits themselves to ensure that there will be a coordinated management of the river basin and the groundwater to protect the quantity and quality of it. The different members of our organizations and our partners must continue to contribute in this way in the next UN conference on water so that we can allow these organizations to be recognized for the role that they are playing in sustaining the Sustainable Development Goals and in striving for peace and prosperity. In the UN conference in 2023, and we have the different actions, water for cooperation, for example, that should be highlighted. And alongside our partners, we also want to actively participate in the different parallel sessions that will be organized on these subjects. Thank you very much.
Merci, Excellence. Thank you to all the statements. Really appreciate. We are honored to have among us also the heads of our constituency, the president of the UNESCO General Conference, and the chairperson of the UNESCO Executive Board. So I'm pleased to invite the president of UNESCO General Conference, Excellency Santiago Irazabal Marwa.
Excellencies, Ministers, Mrs. Tamara Rastovac, Shesmashvili, Chairperson of the Executive Board, Mrs. Shamila Berbaduel, Assistant Director General for Natural Science of UNESCO, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. When we see the Earth from space, we think about this famous picture taken by the crew of Apollo 17 called Blue Marble. That shows that 71% of its surface is covered by water. But what we cannot see in this image is the incredible resource that lies under the soil. Groundwater is a source for life. It is essential for sustaining ecosystems and food security, corresponding to 99% of liquid fresh water of the planet. It must stand at the heart of our effort for building sustainable development. Although only one sustainable development goal of the 2030 agenda makes explicit reference to it, other 53 targets are related to these essential resources. The debate of the last 3 days confirmed that managing groundwater in a responsible manner is not just about science. It is also about human dignity and cooperation. It is about the respect of cultural diversity and living together. It is finally about education and adopting positive values, attitudes, and behaviors for a better future. This summit is the result of a collective initiative undertaken throughout this year for raising awareness on the importance of all dimensions of the hidden resources. Or, in other words, as expressed by the UN World Water Day campaign, making the invisible visible. As highlighted by several ministers, we need to further work together because our demand for water has never been so intense at a time when we face the negative impact of climate change and rising inequalities. Sustainable solutions cannot be proposed by national governments alone, but by all parts of societies and every society. The UN system has also an important role to play, and this summit is a strong demonstration of this common engagement. All actors, including most vulnerable populations, must indeed be involved to ensure long-term management, monitoring, and protection of groundwater. For this, greater investment is needed in capacity building for individuals and institutions to assure the correct use of groundwater resources, avoiding pollution and contamination. We must also foster knowledge sharing and exchange to ensure better data and make the most of new technologies and innovations. Ladies and gentlemen, groundwater must not be taken as a reason for conflict, but instead, it must be seen as an opportunity for sharing responsibility and creating better opportunities to agriculture and industry. As has been said yesterday by Director General Madame Azoulay, water diplomacy is also peace diplomacy. Political will, when coupled with scientific expertise, can create effective governance of water resource. We have very good examples of the harmonization of policies, as in the case of the Guarani Aquifer system that represents one of the largest fresh water reserves in the world, shared by my country, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. This is the role of UNESCO that builds on solid platforms such as the Intergovernmental Hydrological Program and the World Water Assessment Program, as well as a network of 29 related centers and almost 60
water-related chairs to boost international cooperation. The organization also counts on its other areas of competence: education, culture, social sciences, and communication and information to promote this solidarity and strengthen the mutual understanding we need for moving forward with the water action agenda. As remarked by the Secretary General Antonio Guterres in our common agenda, water is a common good and a basic human right. We must not spare effort to protect it for the sake of humanity and our planet. It is in this spirit that I wish to thank each of you and each of us that in the last 2 days have made our commitments to advance groundwater an imperative for a sustainable future. Obrigado. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. It's my honor now to invite the chairperson of the UNESCO Executive Board, Her Excellency Tamara Rastovac-Siamavili. The floor is yours.
Excellencies, respected ministers, President of the General Conference, Assistant Director General, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to address these few words in my capacity as a chairperson of UNESCO's Executive Board and the conclusion of such an important summit. The last 2 days can be crucial to better understand and debate the topic of the groundwater. And I would like to congratulate the organizers for bringing so many global stakeholders to the table. There is no doubt that you managed to make invisible visible, demonstrating why the issue of the groundwater is crucial at so many levels for our societies. Ladies and gentlemen, you have made it clear the issue of the groundwater cannot be confined to the closed circle of experts. Discussing groundwater is not the prerogative of hydrologists or geoscientists. Groundwater affects us all, to the extent that I consider the groundwater an excellent example of how science deeply affects security, peace, and eventually our lives and the well-being of our society. I believe that this summit made this connection evident. The summit contributed to bringing the scientific world together with decision makers, civil society organizations, and other key players. All these stakeholders have something to say when it comes to the management and use of this precious resource. Inclusivity has been key for this success. Ladies and gentlemen, we know it all well. Water is a vital building block of life. Health, food, education, social and economic development. How could we even start pursuing these goals if access to the clean water is not secure to all? Yet, as you have stated so eloquently and loudly, groundwater is not accessible to all. Technological divides, climate change, and other factors prevent some nations from using this precious resource sustainably. We simply cannot let this worsen form of world inequality continue. Several speakers before me have introduced the measures and tools that UNESCO Secretariat is developing to address this challenge. I'm delighted to announce that during the last session of the Executive Board, at the request of South Africa, we adopted a bold decision on the groundwater by calling for more research and data, strengthen international cooperation, more training and technology transfer, and a better management of the local and transboundary groundwater resources. We are urging UNESCO to scale up its efforts to address several important issues regarding groundwater. We are especially concerned about the accessibility and sustainability of management of this resource in Africa, which is one of UNESCO's 2 global priorities. We are also worried about Many small island developing states whose meager groundwater resources risk being further reduced by rising sea levels. Ladies and gentlemen, our goal is clear. Through this executive board decision and the implementation of our programs, we are fostering a global partnership for water and for the groundwater in particular. And to do that, we need to work with all of you, scientific community, policy makers, the world leaders. But we also need to hear the voice of the local populations, including indigenous people, who risk being left behind as this resource becomes rarer and more needed. Together, we have a collective responsibility to keep this topic high on the decision-making agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO is a laboratory of the idea for the peace and development. Convening partners and the scientific world around the global challenges is in our DNA. By hosting, contributing to this event, I believe that UNESCO demonstrated its readiness to face this global challenge in close cooperation with the rest of the UN family. In my capacity as a chairperson of the UNESCO Executive Board, I can reassure you of the continued interest and the support of this governing body to bring this ambitious agenda forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency, for this statement. The International Association of Hydrogeologists is a strategic partner for our work on groundwater. So I'm pleased to welcome David Kramer, the President of the International Association of Hydrogeologists, for his statement. David.
Director Amani, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and colleagues. The International Association of Hydrogeologists is the largest groundwater association in the world, with thousands of members in over 130 countries and national chapters throughout the globe. Our scientific, educational, and charitable organization is delighted to support the efforts of UNESCO in bringing groundwater to the forefront. It's been a crazy year with webinars in groundwater, with conferences, with reports, culminating in this groundwater summit. Summits like this just don't happen. It's due to the hard work of the women and men of UNESCO, the coordination with IGRAC, and we owe them a debt of gratitude for all the work that they've done. What I would like to do is I would like you to join me in expressing our appreciation for all their hard work and gratitude, if you could please. You're probably wondering why I have a bucket. The roof is not leaking. The reason I brought it up is 2 days ago, groundwater scientists from around the world brought groundwater together and mixed it in a symbolic act. The idea is groundwater can bring people together. And we mixed this together from all sorts of countries all over the world, and then we put it in little containers, which many of you have, and there's still more out on the table on the IGRAC, not the IGRAC, the IH desk out there. So if you want a little souvenir, you can bring it with you home. You can water a plant. You can put it in a river to show the importance of groundwater to rivers, whatever you'd like to do with it. Probably don't drink it, okay? But I want to point out that this is just a symbolic act. It is beyond the pale to think that symbolic acts alone will solve our problems. We need action. We need commitment. Where there is unclear governance in groundwater, where there is financial instability, inadequate money and misdirected funds, where innovation is disconnected from the practitioner, there is work for us to do. There is opportunities for us to make things better. There are challenges to meet. Where we have saltwater intrusion in our coastal aquifers, there are a need for technical solutions as the seas rise with climate change. This affects poor countries and rich countries. When we have transboundary aquifers and their cooperation and agreements lag behind that of surface water, we have work to do. If we monitor only the easy things, surface water, and we don't monitor the quantity and quality of groundwater that over half the world relies on, we're not doing our work. And with the onslaught of climate change and population growth, there's a potential for overexploitation of groundwater, the lowering of groundwater tables, the drying of shallow wells, the extinction or diminishment of springs that have been used for millennia, and associated problems with food insecurity and migration of people out of necessity. These are challenges we can meet. I do a lot of work in the country of Niger on groundwater-related problems, and there the most common language is Hausa, and the word for water is Rora. But it has a double meaning. It not only means water, it also means blade, like the blade of a knife. And indeed, water and groundwater can be a double-edged sword. It can be the blade of a plowshare or a scythe indicating harvest and abundance, or it can be the blade of a weapon, meaning conflict and war. How we use this edge of groundwater is really up to us. We can decide how we plan our future. For the young people in the audience and watching on the internet, we need your hope. We need your new ideas. For the experienced people here, what you've done is crucial. Your knowledge is important. We can make the world a better place. We can improve the human condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Before coming to the real closing, we will be having now two sessions of ceremony. And in that regard, I want to invite my colleague Aris O'Reilly. So we are starting with the first ceremony regarding the celebration of cooperation over the Stampriet Aquifer. I don't know, many of you during this meeting did hear about Stampriet Aquifer, shared by Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa. So I will have a small ceremony vis-à-vis the cooperation within that aquifer system. So Alicia, if you could facilitate that segment.
Yes, thank you. We were scared with some of the listened discussions. Now we go for positive examples. I would like to invite the representative of Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa, so the Minister of Namibia, South Africa, and Botswana, because these three countries have, since 10 years, working together, hands in hands, to study their aquifer, the Stampriet Aquifer. Minister Mamzila, Mr. Karl Hans Schettelwijn, and the representative of the Minister of South Africa, the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation, Deborah Mocholi. Also for not having only boys on the scene. Deborah. I would like to give you a certificate of cooperation and peace and the UNESCO Medal for Peace. And there are all other languages that I cannot read, unfortunately.
Thank you.
Thank you. With this ceremony, we wish to highlight the importance of cooperation over water resources, in particular transboundary aquifers, for the benefit of the people and of the planet. Considering that there is a large number of transboundary aquifers in Africa, strengthening cooperation of this system will contribute to the sustainable development of the African continent. We then would like to reward Botswana, Namibia, and South Africa for the cooperation established for the Stamford Aquifer System. Thank you very much. May I go on? Well, we have now looking at 2023, crucial moment next year. But we have also heard that after 2023, we will have the 10th World Water Forum in Bali. And we have now to pass the baton from Senegal to Bali, and we have with us the President of the World Water Council, Mr. Fochon. I invite Mr. Fochon here. And the Minister Seti, the Minister Siti Nurabaya Bahar from Indonesia. And the Minister Thiam is still here with us. Oh, yes. He said that he had to most probably leave, so we are happy that he's here with us. President Fochon, ministers, this is our hands, and this is how we have to take groundwater. I give this to the World Water Council because we definitely want to have more groundwater in Bali and ever all the other World Water Forum. Thank you so much.
Hydrogeologists came with a bucket. We are coming with this vase. At the very beginning, it was a button, but we need to be transparent. We have lost the button, and that's a pity. That's a pity. So, Mrs. already very kindly find this very nice vase. You say vase in English, and it will be the button, not the button, but the bâton en français. Let me just say a few words. The first words will be again to thank you, UNESCO, Shamila, and also you, Mrs. O'Reilly, Mr. Mani, and your Director General. And I would like also, please, to thank you and to ask you to applaud them, because we had during these 2 days a fantastic organization. All the speakers were bringing their know-how, their ideas, their feelings, their emotions. And it was very, very nice. This morning, at the different French radios or TV, they were speaking for the first time about groundwater. And yes, Mrs. O'Reilly, during, with our Indonesian colleagues, during the next forum in Bali in May 2024, groundwater, I promise, will be at the center of our debate, will be, I hope, at the center of our proposals and at the center of the solutions and responses that we have to bring to the population. Let me thank my friend Serigne Thiam, Minister of Water and Sanitation of Senegal. Together with his team, we have prepared a very nice forum. It was a difficult period during the COVID to organize this forum. Sometimes we had the opportunity to meet, but most of the time it was by video conference, and organize a forum with more than 10,000 delegates by video conference is not so happy. So thank you again. Thank you to Senegal. No, I will not speak about football. It's not the moment, sorry. We have a problem in the World Water Council tomorrow. We have a meeting, and we have on one hand the treasurer who is from Portugal, and all my Moroccan friends. Mr. Baraka is there, and I hope we will not have a diplomatic dispute before, during, and after the match. And just to end, Mrs. Minister, we are preparing, I'm sure, a great forum. You are very much mobilized to do it with us. We will have, perhaps, I hope, new issues on the one. You have brought new ideas, very interesting. And ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of water, don't forget why we are here today in this room, yesterday in Dakar, tomorrow in Bali. Why are we thinking? Why are we acting? That's because we have to work for the poorest and be able to bring them water and sanitation. That's our duty, and thank you to join us, help us to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we do some photos.
No, he's giving. The button.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So from here, the Granota Summit, we are looking forward to the UN 2023 Water Conference. So I'm pleased to invite the representative of the two co-hosts of the UN 2023 Water Conference to come on stage. Sultan Ramivo, Special Envoy, and Her Excellency Monique van der Leyen, Ambassador. Just to invite all of us before the closing message of our Assistant Director General, Shamina Narbedouel.
Thank you very much, Abu. Excellencies, ministers, ambassadors, dear friends. It's a great honor for me to address you in the closing of this excellent gathering. And first of all, I would like to congratulate UNESCO and partners for excellent summit. Throughout the year, and especially for these last 2 days, putting a lot of efforts, you really made the invisible invisible, the invisible visible. So thank you very much and bravo. Thank you. Dear friends, water resources, including underground waters, are under high pressure. In the UN Water Conference next March in New York, it's a unique opportunity for all of us, for the world community, to better understand, manage, and value these resources. And importantly, to change our thoughts, our approach, our perception, and to accelerate our actions. We have no right to miss this opportunity. The next generation will not forgive us to miss it. Tajikistan and the Netherlands, the co-hosts of this historical conference, jointly with UNDESA and UN Water, have been putting a lot of efforts, energy, enthusiasm to make this historical conference a big success. We learned a lot from each other. We learned from others in this process. But imagine Tajikistan and the Netherlands, two countries with absolutely different nature and culture, from the mountains and delta, upstream and the downstream, developed and developing, from source to sea, have been collaborating very successfully in this process. That is power of water. Water connects continents, water connects countries, people, and even cultures. Water united us, so let's be united. Let's be brothers and waters in New York and even beyond for water. This is a vital resource. This is source of our life, and it deserves to be highly respected and valued. So please join us in New York to pay our respect to water and make the conference a watershed moment for the world. Thank you for your attention. And Madam Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much. And indeed, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Kingdom of the Netherlands fully agrees with what our Tajik colleague just said. We work together as a family towards the 2023 UN conference, Water Conference. And this first ever Groundwater Summit is such an important step in understanding water better. A summit where we were told and provoked, as you said, to make the unseen visible, where ideas and support were shared, where we worked on commitments regarding the challenges in the water cycle, challenges all of us face. Groundwater was our point of view, our source, looking at the water cycle and how to make it more sustainable. And all this work here at our own UNESCO headquarters, we did in fact on the banks of the great river Seine. Now let's imagine again. Through the Seine, our commitments will flow to the sea, onto the ocean, until they reach New York. And while they sail across the ocean, new commitments might even have time to enhance ours made this week. Commitments to reinforce each other and to achieve an integrated approach on water. Connecting water with food, energy, cities, biodiversity, and much more, trickling down in society, finding replication. Imagine after a journey of about 3 months at sea, our commitments will have matured, grown, become integrated, and can, in New York, become part of a strong water action agenda. Imagine after arriving in New York, they disembark at the East River and enter the headquarters of the UN. There the leaders of all UN member states will come together for the first time in 46 years on water, to support that water action agenda, which is needed to realize the change we need to really start investing in water, recognizing its worth for all of us in our economies, for our health, in our lives. So let's work hard on these meaningful commitments to achieve, as you said, a watershed moment in New York in March 2023. Water rules. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this message, calling us, all of us, to New York next year for the UN 2020 conference. We are almost near the end. So before calling our Assistant Director General, Shamila Ner-Bedouel, I would like really to thank all of you for your participation, your contribution, and I'm honored to be the master of ceremony during the opening and also the closing. And now it's my duty to invite our Assistant Director General, Shamila Ner-Bedouel, to close this summit. Shamila, you have the floor.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, dear delegates and participants, we have come to a watershed moment as well. It's the first time in the history of humanity that we have had a summit on groundwater. It has been inspired by so many messages of support for the promotion of groundwater over the months and years to come, our ethical responsibility towards future generations and our children of the future. While the preparations for the UN Conference on Water are taking place in March next year, let us not forget that we must formulate your commitments so that groundwater can be included in the water action agenda. Otherwise, we would have failed our nations. The UN Water Joint Message will have an important role to play. This message has already been transmitted to member states, and we hope that the New York conference will take into account the challenges, the specificities of groundwater that benefits humanity. It will be a question of improving our knowledge, the way we manage groundwater, the way we value it, the way we can invest in it, and share this vital resource. From the 24-25 October stakeholders meeting and the preparatory meetings on the UN 2023 Water Conference, UNESCO is mobilizing the education, science, culture, and communication partners and countries across the world for a science-based global water assessment that includes groundwater. We have a UNESCO science report, we have the IBES, we have the IPCC for climate change, but there is no global science-based water assessment. We need this science-based water assessment. And we call upon all of you to support this science-based global water assessment that includes groundwater. We really need your support in this endeavor. Groundwater is our ally in combating the effects of climate change. Our water security and much of our food supply chain is all dependent on groundwater. Let us not saw off the branch on which we are seated. What will happen when these reserves are depleted? We must ensure that this does not happen. This is our ethical responsibility towards humanity and the planet. We heard so many challenges about these endeavors, how to tackle this challenge from the youth perspective and also from indigenous knowledge populations. They have a lot to teach us. Now I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the partners of the UN Water family for designating UNESCO to lead this important initiative on groundwater. I want to thank the UN Water family for nominating UNESCO to this prestigious position of leading the Groundwater Summit. I do hope that this summit continues to be a success and that it is not terminated in this room. I want to thank specifically His Excellency Mr. Santiago Irazabal Morao, the President of the General Conference, for being with us here tonight and sharing your messages. I want to thank Her Excellency Mrs. Tamara Rastovac-Siamshvili, Chairperson of the Executive Board, who actually defended the last resolution on groundwater. I want to thank the UN DESA. I want to thank the President of the World Water Council. Thank you, Mr. Fauchon, for being with us. I want to thank the government of Indonesia for taking the baton from the government of Senegal. I want to thank IGREC, all the experts from across the world, thousands who've shared with us the capacities, the skills, knowledge, and scientific enterprise on water and groundwater. The hydrologists, the hydrogeologists, our reporters who've present with us here today. But I thank IGRAC and all the Category 2 centers of UNESCO. I want to thank the UNESCO IHP Water family, the over 170 IHP committees in over 170 countries, the over 35 Category 2 centers, the thousands of experts who offer their expertise free to manage water. I thank you all. However, I want to thank somebody very special with us here today, and that is Miss Groundwater, Alicia O'Reilly. Where is she? I want to thank Dr. Abu Amani, who's been leading the division. Thank you, Abu, for your leadership. And a big applause to all the staff, the experts, all the colleagues who have worked tirelessly, days and nights, to put this ambitious agenda together, to bring the experts in this unusual gathering to discuss groundwater. I thank you sincerely to all the exceptional staff of the Water Division and the Science sector, especially the Water Division. Thank you all. And all the colleagues from across the world who joined us. Yeah. Yes. And I want to make one more special statement to all of you. It's very important that the messages of this Groundwater Summit are included in the water agenda in New York. So we trust you will help us to take that message to New York. But it does not stop in New York. The water journey goes back home. Hence, every country must have a map of its own groundwater. That is essential. We would have defeated the purposes of this Groundwater Summit. If every country cannot have its own hydrogeological map, what are your resources? The remedies under your feet to the water crisis. Water is indeed the connector, as been mentioned by all the distinguished speakers before me. Water is life, and every drop counts. We need science. We need more and better science to manage our water. We need open science. And this gathering of exceptional scientists have shared with us their scientific knowledge on groundwater, on this exceptional resource. It is your duty now and our collective duty to make sure that we make the invisible visible, because groundwater sustains life on Earth. Water is life, and water is the journey. I thank you all sincerely and look forward to seeing you all very soon and presenting to us your individual countries' groundwater map. Thank you.
We would like to call the colleague of the Secretariat of UN Water with us on the stage. Come, please. The colleague of the Division of Water Sciences. Come on the stage. You did the job. Yes, yes. Sultan, please come.
Ambassador Van Dalen.
Ambassador Van Dalen, the President.
President of the General Conference, the Chair of the Board, IGRAC.
IGRAC, Elizabeth. Where is Elizabeth? The Director of the IGRAC Center.
Ministers and everybody, and all the participants.
IGRAC Neno is here. Elizabeth is coming. The IGRAC staff, please, here.
Yes.
For our water family, the Chief of the Board, the Executive Board, the General Conference.
And all the ministers and everybody.
I mean, if we call all the ministers, there will be nobody there anymore. All ministers for a photo, for a family photos.
A bit to the left, the participants.
No, it's okay. The ministers. Yes. All the ministers.
We'd like to call honorable ministers and all the participants, because every one of you is going to be a guardian of groundwater. Please join us on the podium.
To see you in New York 2023, March 2020.
We should not also forget the interpreters. Thank you. The technicians,
The interpreters have made miracles from Korean, Chinese, English, Spanish, French, everything. The technicians that have coped with us.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. Let's go a little bit.
We say all.
I think I'm the shortest.
New York 2023. See you.
Thank you very much, Nelly. Indeed, it's a wonderful job.